There's a point in your life where someone says something to you, and for the first time, you don't just hear the words. You feel something behind them. You pick up the tension in their voice, the forced smile, the hesitation they tried to hide. It's like your spirit knows they're not being fully honest, even if everything they said sounded right. You walk away from that conversation feeling unsettled, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. That's discernment. Your spiritual eye is beginning to open. It's like being able to hear the silence in a loud room. You don't just accept what people show you anymore. You start sensing what's underneath. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, just a gut feeling that keeps tugging, and once you notice it, you can't ignore it anymore. When your spiritual eye begins to open, God doesn't show you visions of angels right away. He shows you the truth about people. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, and it's the first sign that you're being pulled out of surface-level living. You're being prepared to see the world the way He sees it. And that starts with seeing people as they really are, not just who they pretend to be. The first sign that your spiritual eye is opening is that you feel drained around certain people for no clear reason. It used to be easy to be around them. You laughed, you talked, you blended in. But now, you leave those same conversations feeling heavy, almost like something was taken from you. You can't explain it logically. They didn't insult you, they didn't argue, but deep down, your spirit felt under attack. This is not mood swings, it's spiritual awareness sharpening itself. When your spiritual eye starts opening, you begin to feel energy shifts before anything is said. Someone can smile and still drain you. Someone can compliment you and still carry envy. And your spirit is learning how to pick up on all of it. This isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about recognizing that your peace matters. God is making you sensitive to environments, conversations, even jokes, because what used to slide before no longer sits right with your spirit. You don't owe explanations for protecting your peace. Your spiritual sight comes with spiritual responsibility, and sometimes that means walking away before your emotions catch up with what your spirit already knows. Another sign is that you start losing interest in small talk and surface-level relationships. You used to go along with it, the casual chats, the empty compliments, the recycled topics, but now they feel hollow. You sit there, nodding, smiling, but inside you feel a disconnect. It's not arrogance, it's not isolation, it's a quiet craving for something deeper. Your spirit is hungry for truth, not noise, and shallow conversations can't feed you anymore. You notice it in friendships that used to feel close. They still want to talk about gossip, trends, and distractions, but you're thinking about purpose, calling, and eternity. It's like you're standing in the same room, but on a different frequency. God is removing the filler. The things that once entertained you now annoy you, not because they're evil, but because they're empty, and He's preparing your heart to receive deeper things. When your spiritual eye opens, it becomes harder to pretend, harder to fake smiles, harder to ignore what you really feel. You begin to notice that the world is loud, but very few people are saying anything real. Another hidden sign is that you experience unexplainable emotional waves that make you question your sanity. Some days, you wake up and feel a deep sadness, but nothing bad happened. Other days, there's a strange peace over you, even when everything around you is chaotic. You start feeling things that don't make sense to the natural mind. This is spiritual sensitivity. Your soul is tuning into things the eyes can't see. You walk into a room and feel a heaviness, like something's off. No one says it, no one sees it, but you feel it, and it stays with you long after you leave. At first, you question yourself. Am I just overthinking? Why am I so emotional all of a sudden? But deep down, a quiet voice says, you're waking up. You're not crazy. You're being trained. God is allowing you to feel spiritual climates before you fully understand them. It's preparation, not punishment. You're being taught how to feel what others ignore. This is how prophets are trained, not in temples or pulpits, but in the silence of strange emotions that refuse to be explained. Another hidden sign is that your dreams become more vivid, strange, or prophetic. You close your eyes at night, but it's not just sleep anymore. It feels like you've entered another realm. You see faces you've never met, situations that haven't happened yet, or symbols that stay with you long after waking up. Some dreams shake you, others bring peace, and some feel like warnings wrapped in mystery. You wake up at 3 a.m. for no reason. Your heart is pounding. You remember parts of the dream, just enough to feel like it meant something. But you can't explain it to anyone without sounding weird. This is called sharp initiation. God often speaks in dreams when the noise of the world is too loud. And when your spiritual eye begins to open, your dreams stop being random stories. They start becoming messages. You're being trained to listen with your spirit, not your ears. God doesn't always speak through words. Sometimes He paints, and your dreams are the canvas. Another hidden sign is that you start recognizing patterns that others ignore. You begin to notice when certain things keep happening around you, the same arguments, the same delays, the same type of people showing up in different faces. Others shrug it off. Life is just unpredictable, they say, but you feel there's more to it. You sense design where they see accident. When your spiritual eye opens, your mind stops accepting things at face value. You ask deeper questions. You wonder what God is trying to show you. You start to see cycles and you start to resist them. This is spiritual maturity. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being alert, because the enemy repeats his tactics, but so does God. Patterns are spiritual fingerprints. They reveal whether you're being attacked, tested, or taught. And when your sight clears, you stop walking into traps and start walking with wisdom. Another hidden sign is that you begin to feel deeply lonely, even when you're not alone. You could be in a room full of people, laughing, talking, even loved, and still feel like you don't belong. This is spiritual detachment. God is pulling your soul away from things that used to anchor you. You try to reconnect. You try to care about the same old topics, the same old people, the same old places, but it's like your heart has already moved on. This kind of loneliness doesn't come from rejection. It comes from spiritual preparation. When God opens your spiritual eye, He often isolates you to protect the clarity. Too many voices can blind you just as much as closed eyes. This is when your wilderness begins. Not because you've done something wrong, but because He wants to speak to you without interruption. And the only way to hear Him clearly is to be willing to sit in that silence without trying to fill it. Another powerful hidden sign is that your old desires start to die without you forcing it. There were things you used to chase hard: popularity, status, that next level of success. And at one point, it all felt urgent, like your life wouldn't be complete without it. But now, it doesn't excite you anymore. You don't even know when it happened. You just woke up one day and realized, I don't care about that the way I used to. That's not laziness. That's spiritual awakening. When your spiritual eye starts to open, your appetite begins to change. What once looked like gain now feels like distraction, and what once felt like sacrifice now feels like peace. God doesn't always change your life through dramatic moments. Sometimes He changes your life by making you lose interest in things that no longer align with where He's taking you. This is how you know you're being prepared, because the things of this world lose their grip, not because you forced them out, but because your spirit outgrew them. Another hidden sign is that you start speaking with greater weight, even when you say less. You've noticed people start paying closer attention when you talk, not because you're louder, but because something in your words carries weight. A quiet authority, a depth you didn't have before. You're no longer interested in proving a point. You don't argue like you used to. You speak when you're led, and stay silent when your spirit says, "Don't waste your breath." This change doesn't come from books or training. It comes from being broken, from surviving seasons where all you had was God's voice, and now that voice echoes through yours. When your spiritual eye opens, your presence shifts. People feel it. They don't always know why, but they listen differently. And deep down, you know it's not about being impressive. It's about being real. Because now, when you speak from a place of truth, not ego. Another sign is that you become uncomfortable with compromise, even in small things. You used to overlook it. A little lie here, a harmless excuse there, bending your convictions to keep the peace. But now, even the smallest compromise leaves a weight on your chest. You feel it instantly, like a quiet grief in your spirit. It's not about being perfect, it's about being aligned. Your spiritual eye is teaching you that every choice carries weight, and what once felt normal now feels dangerous. You find yourself double-checking your motives, rethinking your decisions. You can't go with the crowd just because it's easier anymore. That inner check keeps pulling you back. And that's how you know the Holy Spirit is working deeper in you. You're not just being convicted, you're being called to a higher standard, not for applause, but because your soul refuses to settle for anything less than truth. Another sign is that you feel drawn to stillness, even when life is demanding noise. There's a new craving in you, not for entertainment, not for busyness, but for stillness, for quiet, for time alone, where nothing is fighting for your attention but God. You find yourself stepping away more often, not out of sadness, not out of stress, but because your soul needs space to breathe. You stop filling every silence with sound. You stop chasing constant updates, endless scrolling, shallow interactions. Because in the stillness, something sacred happens. You begin to hear what you were too distracted to notice. When your spiritual eye starts to open, God begins to meet you in the quiet. Not in the noise of performance, not in the approval of people, but in the moments when it's just you and Him. And in those moments, you're not trying to be spiritual, you just are, because your spirit finally feels safe, in silence. Another important sign is that you begin to see through religion and feel a pull toward real relationship. You sit in the same church, hear the same phrases, sing the same songs. But something inside starts to feel off, like you're being fed tradition, not truth. It's not rebellion, it's recognition. Your spirit starts to crave something deeper than routine. You want God, not just the idea of Him. You begin to notice the difference between performance and presence, between someone who talks about God and someone who walks with Him. And as your spiritual eye opens, you stop being impressed by loud voices. You start being drawn to quiet obedience, to those who live what they believe, not just preach it. God is pulling you into something raw, something real, where faith isn't a Sunday event, but a daily encounter. This is when religion starts to break and relationship begins to rise. Another sign is that you start to feel like you're being watched spiritually. There are moments where you pause, and it feels like something unseen is observing you, not in a paranoid way, but in a way that makes you alert, like your spirit just knows you're not alone. You can't explain it, you just feel it. In your room, while praying, even walking down the street. Sometimes it feels protective, like someone's guarding you. Other times it feels like a test, like heaven is watching your choices quietly. This isn't superstition, this is sensitivity. Your spirit is waking up to the reality that the spiritual realm is always active. And as your spiritual eye opens, you stop living like this world is all there is. You begin to live with more intention, more caution, more reverence, because you know that your actions are being seen, not just by people, but by the one who called you. Another sign is that you begin to feel a war inside you between who you were and who you're becoming. There's a tension that shows up unexpectedly, a tug of war between the old version of you, the one who was fine blending in, staying comfortable, avoiding the deeper stuff, and the new you that's emerging. You feel it when you try to return to old habits. They don't feel right anymore. You feel it when you're around people who only know the former you. You start shrinking back just to avoid being too different. But that's the thing, you've already changed, and pretending you haven't only makes the war louder inside. When your spiritual eye opens, your old self can't survive. The masks start falling off, the act gets exhausting, and God begins separating you from anything that keeps you small. This is when the real fight begins, not with others, but with yourself. And if you don't surrender to who you're becoming, you'll end up resenting who you were. Another sign is that you start hearing messages everywhere, even in ordinary moments. You could be watching a film, listening to a stranger talk, scrolling through a song lyric, and suddenly something hits you deep. A phrase, a line, a sentence that feels like it was meant just for you. You stop, rewind it, replay it again. Not because it was poetic, but because your spirit heard something behind the words. This is what happens when your spiritual eye opens. God doesn't just speak through prophets and preachers. He speaks through everything, if you're paying attention. A delayed train, a child's question, a quiet whisper in your own mind. They all start carrying deeper meaning. You stop asking, was that just in my head? You start saying, God, I hear you. When your spirit is awake, the world becomes a message board, not in a spooky way, in a present way, because you're no longer waiting to be spoken to, you're listening all the time. Another sign is that you start feeling deeply misunderstood, even by people close to you. You try to explain what's happening in you, the changes, the convictions, the shift in how you see life. But the more you talk, the more blank stares you get. People say things like, you're being too deep. Why can't you just let it go? Or worse, you've changed. And they're right, you have. But it's hard to explain a spiritual awakening to someone who hasn't felt one. You're not trying to be difficult, you're just no longer satisfied with surface-level thinking. You feel things more, you question more, you want more, and that more makes people uncomfortable. When your spiritual eye opens, it creates distance. Not out of pride, but because the road you're on is narrow. Not everyone will walk it with you. Some will watch from a distance, some will walk away. But you'll learn that being misunderstood is part of the call. Another powerful sign is that you begin to sense danger before it arrives. Something inside you tightens before anything even happens. A place doesn't feel right. A message feels off. A decision feels rushed, and your gut just says, don't. You pause. You observe, and later, you find out you were right to hesitate. That's not fear. That's protection. It's the spirit warning you without needing to explain why. You start realizing that your spiritual eye sees things your natural eyes can't. You don't need evidence to feel conviction. You don't need confirmation to say no. And this makes people question you. Why are you backing out? Why are you being so cautious? But you've learned, obedience to that inner check is better than regret. This is spiritual maturity. God doesn't just show you blessings, He shows you traps. And sometimes, the most spiritual thing you'll ever do is walk away before anything goes wrong. Another great sign is that you feel a constant urgency to get your life in order. There's a pressure on your heart that doesn't go away. Not panic, but urgency. Like time is running out and you don't want to waste it. You start looking at your habits, your routines, your hidden distractions, and suddenly they feel costly, like they're robbing you of something sacred. You begin to clean your space, clear your mind. Let go of people, conversations, and commitments that don't align with where you're going. It's not about perfection. It's about preparation. Your spirit knows something is coming, even if your calendar says otherwise. This is what happens when your spiritual eye begins to open. You stop treating your life like a rehearsal. You begin to live like every choice matters, because it does. God is aligning you for something bigger, and deep down, you don't want to be caught unprepared. Another sign is that you sense a calling, but you can't yet name it. There's something stirring in you. You can't describe it clearly. You just feel pulled, like there's something you're meant to do, but you don't yet know what it is. It shows up in random moments, when you're alone, when you're thinking deeply, even when you're doing something ordinary and a voice inside whispers, "This isn't all there is." You're not imagining it. You're being summoned, not to a stage, not to fame, but to purpose. Your spiritual eye is giving you glimpses, not the full picture, just flashes, enough to make you restless with the life you've settled for. And though you don't have all the answers yet, you know this for sure. You can't go back. Not after what you've seen. Not after what you've started to feel. God is calling you deeper, and soon what's been stirring in silence will speak out loud. Once your spiritual eye begins to open, life doesn't go back to normal. You see through conversations. You feel the weight behind decisions. You recognize the spiritual temperature of rooms others call fine. You can't unhear what your spirit has heard. You can't pretend you don't notice the signs anymore. And you can't keep living like none of it matters. This awareness is a gift, but it comes with a cost. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose certain relationships. You'll even lose parts of yourself that no longer fit who you're becoming. But what you gain? Clarity, depth, an unshakable connection with the one who gave you sight in the first place. Your spiritual eye opened because God decided it was time. Not because you were ready, but because He needed you to see. And once you've seen the truth, living blind is no longer an option.